Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts Aaron and Parker. All right, everyone, welcome to episode 64 of Tokyo Wave. We are your hosts, Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
France investigates Uniqlo unit and other retailers over alleged Xinjiang abuses.
SoftBank suspends Pepper robot production.
Mitsubishi Electric used rigged air conditioning test program since the 1980s.
This week in Japan. So our first story, France investigates Uniqlo unit and other retailers over alleged Xinjiang abuses.
Reuters has reported that French prosecutors have opened an investigation into 4 fashion retailers, including a unit of Japan's fast retailing, on suspicion of concealing crimes against humanity in China's Xinjiang region.
The procedure is linked to accusations against China over its treatment of minority Muslim Uyghurs in the region, such as the use of forced labor.
Reports have said that Uniqlo France, Zara owner Inditex, France's SMCP, and Skechers were the subject of the investigation. Skechers.
I never liked Skechers. I always wanted the Nikes as a kid.
I always hated Skechers. I don't like the logo. It's just like, knowing that they're, supporting slavery just makes me have a new reason not to like them.
Get your new Skechers made by slaves.
But seriously, folks, this is not funny stuff. And it looks like France, of course, the world capital for outrage, is now going to do something about it.
You disgust me.
So in 2013, France founded its central office to fight crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes. So I guess it's like the Super Friends, but they find people who make crappy cheese and
make slaves make sneakers.
Yeah,
something like that.
And if they catch you using slaves to make crappy cheese, you're really in for it.
Ooh. Fast Retailing said in a statement from Tokyo that it had not been contacted by French authorities and that none of its production partners are located in Xinjiang, adding that, "If and when notified, we will cooperate fully with the investigation to reaffirm there is no forced labor in our supply chains."
Well, the French Super Friends think differently. Fast Retailing lost an appeal with U.S. Customs in May after a shipment of Uniqlo men's shirts was impounded because of suspected violations of a ban on Xinjiang cotton.
2 non-governmental organizations filed a complaint in France in early April against multinationals for concealment of forced labor and crimes against humanity.
United Nations experts and rights groups estimate over 1 million people, mainly Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities, have been detained in recent years in a vast system of camps in China's western Xinjiang region.
In March, the United States, the European Union, the UK, and Canada imposed sanctions on Chinese officials for human rights abuses in the region. Beijing retaliated immediately with its own punitive measures.
Human Rights Watch this year documented what it said could constitute crimes against humanity being committed by China in Xinjiang.
So I'm sure this story is not that big of a surprise to most listening. Many have heard about this situation with forced labor and with almost detention camp style forced living situations with the Uyghurs in China.
And we've even talked about it before on previous episodes. And, that France, of course, and their French super friends are trying to do something about it is a great move in the right direction. But obviously, what can France do? Of course, it can penalize these global companies. And that's a step in the right direction, but, what is it? Even if they're not making shirts that go overseas, I would imagine there's still a lot of domestic companies within China that will take up the patriotic cause to, use forced labor.
Yeah, I
hope that this is not the case, but I would suspect otherwise.
What a terrible situation. I see France as being like this super progressive nation. They're the ones they're the location of the Paris Agreement, right? For her climate control and everything. Or for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And now they're actually actively speaking out about this. France is always in kind of an interesting position geopolitically because, I think they used to have a lot of territories, right? And control lots of other nation states. But now they're this kind of third party that can point the finger pretty easily. And
it's interesting because, of course, France is part of the EU, and within the EU, you've got countries, well, not anymore, the UK, but also there's Germany and Spain, and there's a lot of different players. But I think that other countries within the EU might be a little bit more careful in doing something antagonistic to China because they're somewhat worried about this retaliation. And you really can't not be worried about retaliation because the precedent has been set that if a country does something that China does not like, China will retaliate by directly creating measures that punish the companies of that country.
Yeah.
And all of the major companies of the world and these countries' fantastic model taxpayers, with some exceptions, tend to have a huge presence in China and rely on China for a very large swath of their market share. So really, whenever you see a country come out and, whack China with the stick, China whacks those companies with a stick, and it really can hurt the competitiveness of these global companies.
Yeah. Props to France for not giving a shit.
Yes, sorry, French companies who probably just lost half of your market share, but you're doing the right thing.
They are.
And I hate to say that too, because I also strongly support what France is doing, and I'm sure the French super friends are doing a champagne toast right now. But there are consequences for that, and it's unfortunate that we can't retaliate by, of course, saying, well, we're not gonna sell Chinese products in France, but then of course all of a sudden the dollar stores would not have any products.
Yeah. What a wild situation. I feel like hate to go down this rabbit hole, but seems like the climate before World War II, when you heard about what was going on in Germany. Maybe that's a bit of an extreme example, but really it's scary times, and a lot of the recent news stories coming out of China and what they're doing is very frightening. So it is good to see some democratic countries getting together and standing up against a lot of these crimes against humanity. And up next, SoftBank suspends Pepper robot production.
NHK has reported that SoftBank Group has suspended production of its Pepper humanoid robot and is cutting the workforce of its global robotics business.
The company's robotic unit, SoftBank Robotics Group, says it stopped making the robot at a Taiwanese plant in the summer of last year.
Company officials say demand is weak in Europe and elsewhere as many commercial facilities have been unable to make in-store sales due to the coronavirus. They also say inventory is sufficient for leasing services.
SoftBank has been reducing staff numbers and redeploying personnel in the United States, Britain, and Japan. It also plans to let go some of its 330 workers in France.
It's okay, though, because they can join the French Super Friends.
Exactly.
So Pepper, that humanoid robot that everybody hates, is designed to recognize basic human emotions and has been used at company receptions and commercial facilities.
It grabbed attention when it went on sale in 2015, but the company now faces the challenge of reassessing its robotic strategy.
Hey Pepper, come here into this dark closet.
Okay, Pepper will do so. Pepper no like, Pepper want escape.
Nice.
But seriously, what a worthless robot.
God damn it, I hate Pepper.
Anytime I see that thing somewhere, and there's been certain like Uketsuke, like whatever, they're like, okay, you got to sign up, and they point to the robot. I'm like, oh, please, no.
You know what? Once we do get past the pandemic and we can go back to go out and do things normally, I hope there will be a new Tekken game at the arcades so that I can, unlock the bonus like finishing move, which is drop kicking Pepper off of a cliff or onto a train or something sinister.
I could see like it's in Saizeriya, right? That's where Pepper is. I think I've seen it in Saizeriya before. I'd love to see a video of like Saizeriya like managers taking the robot, lifting it above their head, and just throwing it into like an American-sized dumpster. Like, I don't know.
I mean, you could probably boil it down and put it in the vats with the Magnum bottles of wine, and nobody would know the difference.
That thing, gosh, it's just a prop. It's nothing but a prop. It can't recognize human emotions. Come on.
But company officials say they will reconsider resuming production if demand recovers.
They say Pepper serves as the, quote, face of the company, so they will maintain the business while reviewing their plans in the field, including the development of other robots.
Well, just like that robot in the Terminator, I think their face is melting.
Yeah. Really bad robots. But SoftBank does own Boston Dynamics, which, if anyone's messed around or looked around on YouTube for robots, that's the dog robot. That's like super advanced. Have you seen this one before? Where they're kicking it and then it gets back up?
Honestly, I think a dog is probably a better concept. You know what? If they just had a dog in the reception, I think people would be much more happy to interact with it.
The dog robot I'm mentioning from Boston Dynamics, which is owned by SoftBank, you can get it for $70,000 if you're a company. They're allowing like industrial enterprise sales for this robot. But this will scare the crap out of your customers because this thing looks like a piece of military hardware, the way it moves and everything. You've never seen videos of this?
Which is why you want to have it in your reception. I mean, nobody's going to try and murder that robot.
It's kind of like, it's like putting a Rottweiler like in the front of your house, like whenever a guest comes in, you have this thing. And like a camera comes out and starts scanning you and everything.
Damn it, Aaron, now I want one.
Yeah.
Come on, SoftBank, get this, crappy, annoying humanoid robot out of the picture. We want the big, scary dog robot.
Yeah.
Give the people what they want. I mean, what if the dog like took you to your seat at Saizeriya and is like, "What do you want? You want wine, right? Woof."
Oh man!
It just throws a bottle of wine at you. Drink, woof.
No, the movement on those things is wild, man. It's crazy.
No, I think I remember it now. And I mean, it's scary, right? How fast it moves.
Yeah, it looks like something that's being developed for the military. I think that's probably they've had that in the back of their mind throughout all development. But now a big Japanese conglomerate company bought them, so it's owned by SoftBank.
Well, SoftBank loves dogs, so.
Yeah. Maybe the robot dog will replace everyone's favorite Shiba Inu dog.
Up next, Mitsubishi Electric used rigged air conditioning test programs since the 1980s.
GG Press has reported that Mitsubishi Electric is believed to have used, since the 1980s, a computer program that automatically fills in fabricated inspection data on air conditioning equipment for trains.
A Mitsubishi Electric factory in Nagasaki Prefecture introduced the program in an apparent effort to avoid the time-consuming process of having to conduct tests in a way specified by clients.
The revelation added to allegations that the company was systematically involved in fraudulent inspections over a long period of time.
Long story short, they were. Mitsubishi Electric will draw up preventative measures after investigating the cause of the wrongdoings. It also plans to set up an investigative committee which will include an external lawyer to look into whether similar misconduct occurred elsewhere in the company.
Just one lawyer.
Just thinking, it's not going to be Johnny Cochran. It's going to be like Joe Cochran, his air conditioner specific buddy.
Yeah.
My name's Joe Cochran. I'm a specialist in air conditioner law.
Y'all got a problem with any AC unit? Call up Joe Cochran. Used in tests to assess the cooling performance and power consumption of the air conditioners, the program automatically alters figures to fit with clients' specifications, even if the company conducted inspections that produced different results. Wow,
that's funny. That sounds a lot like Dieselgate. It's like a spoofing device.
It sounds very illegal.
So a source said that the figures were fabricated based on the results of an earlier test conducted as specified by clients. Mitsubishi Electric then issued inspection certificates to the same clients.
This means that Mitsubishi Electric conducted uniform tests under its own specifications and fabricated test data to make it seem like the inspections fulfilled client standards.
According to Mitsubishi Electric, the fraudulent inspections were conducted between at least around 1985 and 2020. That's a lot of fraudulent inspections.
The scandal may have affected up to 84,600 air conditioners for trains. Of them, 68,800 units were shipped away to railway operators in Japan, and 15,800 were delivered overseas.
Whoa, I feel like we found the problem. You know how, when it's hot in the train, you're always like dying.
Yeah.
And then when it's cold in the train, it's also like, it's never comfortable in Japanese trains.
Nah. So
it's either too hot or too cold, or not hot enough or not cold enough.
They never were checking anything.
They were using fake data, apparently.
For 35 years?
That's a lot of years. That's kind of aggravating. If
Yeah.
I were a train company, I would be very mad.
Stock tip of the week. Sell Mitsubishi Electric. Sell. Short it.
At this point, I think it's better off of buying the Dogecoin.
So we're gonna short Mitsubishi and then buy all the residuals with Dogecoin, the Shiba coin.
Hey, come on, guys. We can go get a discount on some new air conditioners. Shut up, Joe Cochran. Nobody wants to listen to you.
The Nagasaki factory has also been involved in fraudulent inspections that affected up to 1,000 air compressor units for brakes and other train parts. The fraud included using test results for old models.
Brakes for trains? Fraudulent inspections? Ooh, I would not want to be the person who commissioned that.
Yeah, the Yamanote line, there's no issue. We got the certificate right here, boss. Is that the certificate? You mean the one that we generated in-house? Yeah, boss, like we always do, since 1985. No issues, right? When's the last time you heard of a train busting into another train? Ain't no problem.
It's like in a train school, it's like, hey kid, you're not braking early enough. But the manual says, no, not the manual says. These here are Mitsubishi brakes. You gotta start braking from way back there, buddy.
You know, it'd be funny if like people that work on the trains like kind of already knew about this.
I mean, JR and all the railway companies are so persnickety. They were probably just like, we knew it all along.
Yeah, like I can imagine that literally being a conversation. No. With the Mitsubishi brakes, make sure to stop a little bit earlier. For some reason, since 1985, these things just don't work right.
It's really aggravating because I always, feel like a fool talking about Japan's high standards of quality and honesty when these corporate scandals just keep on coming to light. I mean, this is front page news in Japan, of course, is good because, I would imagine this sort of scandal is happening in other countries with such frequency that it's not even news.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, Japan is so serious and Japan is so serious about these safety measures and certificates. And if this is in fact fraudulent behavior that's been going on since 1985, man, this is going to be in the news for the next year. This is crazy. Like one of Japan's biggest companies that survived after the World War II war tribunals, Mitsubishi, right? It's gigantic. And up next, we've got a special interview with Pikachu. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a mistake. Up next on Yen in a Bill, y'all, we're going to be talking about Goldman Sachs reaffirming their commitment to office-based work with new Tokyo headquarters. You're now listening to Tokyo Wave. Yen a bill, y'all.
Goldman Sachs Group is preparing to move its Japan headquarters to a new tower currently being built in Tokyo as the Wall Street-based firm prepares for office life after the pandemic. That's right, they want to go back to the office.
The U.S. investment bank plans to relocate from the landmark Roppongi Hills complex owned by Mori Building into the developer's tentatively named Toranomon Hills Station Tower sometime after its completion.
Construction work on the 49-story building is scheduled to finish in July 2023, according to Mori's website. The development is part of the property giant's 4-tower Toranomon Hills area project in a district just south of the Imperial Palace. A new subway station on the Hibiya line opened there last year.
The plans are in line with Goldman Sachs' commitment to take over the world. Commitment to office life, a stance at odds with some of its rivals looking to reduce office space after the pandemic ushered in a wave of remote work. Chief Executive Officer David Solomon has been vocal in opposing work from home, calling it an aberration.
This is a really divisive topic right now as some companies, especially the Silicon Valley tech companies, have overwhelmingly said, you know what, guys? You never have to come back to work. Woohoo!
Yeah, absolutely.
While other companies, namely finance companies, and I think some other blue chips as well, have basically said the exact opposite. While the pandemic is still going on, we will tentatively allow you to work from home.
You work in software, you can work from your bedroom in your underwear any time of the day. You work in finance, you come into this office at 7:30 a.m. and you stay here until 12 midnight.
It really just, that Wolf of Wall Street mentality is definitely still there. And perhaps for good reason. It's definitely true that with the modernization and the digitization of finance, a lot of these jobs can be done from home now. But at the same time, finance changes so rapidly and quickly that there might also be circumstances in which being in the same place with your colleagues enables faster decisions, which of course could lead to winners and losers.
Yeah. I think too, it's just the fact that all finance is inherently built in and comes from the banking industry. And really, we can talk all day about how Japanese banks are really old school, too traditional, but this is all over the world, right? Banks, I think, are the same everywhere.
Well, would you trust a Silicon Valley company with your money?
Yes, personally.
It's all right, bro. You can get your money eventually, man. We're just we're on vacation, we just decided that we were going to have this retreat in Hawaii, and, we'll be back in a few weeks, man. Chill out.
Thanks for the $1 million investment. In return, we're going to give you 0.0015% of the company. Just to let you know, we're all going on vacation next week. So if you want to hit me up, just launch me a message on Skype or Trello or Slack or Discord, and I'll get back to you when I can. I retract my statement. I don't trust the Silicon Valley companies. I'd rather put it with a bank or financial institution.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I think we kind of, in joking, we came up with the answer to why this culture difference exists.
Yeah, I mean, somebody has to go to the office. It's
yeah.
I think that it's also sort of a divisive thing too, because you say on one hand we should make it so that people don't have to come to the office. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, that's great. And then you take it a step beyond that. It's like, well, not having to come to the office should be a right of workers. And that's where you start to venture into weird territory, because that works if you're an app developer or, somebody who does most of the sort of white collar jobs out there. But if your job is, driving a train or working at a restaurant or construction, you do not have that luxury. So if white collar jobs all go, fully remote, that is just going to widen the wedge between the sort of white collar and blue collar society, which already, of course, is going in that direction.
I think a lot of the general mechanics are completely different from like software to finance, right? With software, you're dealing with a customer base that exists in this kind of ecosystem that's always moving. It doesn't really require too much, manual or people being there to like push them in one direction or the other. We're always on our phones, right? We're always downloading new apps, seeing ads for new stuff, new apps. But with finance, notoriously, a company that tried to build an ecosystem where a lot of this was more free flowing, Robinhood, has had a lot of trouble, right? Over the past year or so. So, it's very difficult for these financial companies or even financially oriented software SaaS companies like Robinhood to make the transition from an industry with mechanics that are embedded into the global banking system to an industry where the mechanics are embedded into just normal users and their willingness to buy and sell products and services like on their iPhone. It's a much different mechanical system. Robinhood is a very good example of why it's so difficult to switch between those two, and why there does need to be some kind of, delineation between the two systems, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. And it's really, the whole sort of office work versus work from home versus hybrid, it's getting more and more complicated as our economy becomes more digital. And really the sort of necessity of working from an office becomes less clear. But at the same time, as things become more digital, people are also sort of craving this analog interaction, which is becoming increasingly rare.
Right.
So what does this mean for office space? By and large, doesn't look very good. Tokyo office vacancies have soared during the pandemic, putting pressure on rents. Vacancies have climbed to an almost 7-year high of 5.9% in May, according to real estate brokerage Miki Shoji.
Other U.S. banks, including Morgan Stanley, have taken a similar stance to Goldman on working from home, while European lenders, including UBS Group AG, are introducing hybrid models. HSBC Holdings plc has committed to a 40% reduction in office space in the long term.
Here in Tokyo, Nomura Holdings is also reportedly considering trimming office space and has already announced plans to make flexible work permanent. And And this sort of echoes other major Japan Inc. companies, such as Fujitsu, have already said they're really going to very largely move to working from home, or as we call it in Japan, telework.
Right.
Which sounds terrible, but why do we call it telework?
Yeah, the example I was trying to talk about earlier, I think a really easy way to kind of abstract this idea between like finance and software, there's certain people in both industries that are holding the infrastructure together. And those people, whether they're working from home or whether they're in the office, like the infrastructure is in their hands. And in software, it's the backend engineers, the server architects, the people managing the server, cloud architects. If the system goes down, they have to, at a moment's notice, get on and turn it back on, right? And finance is a lot like that too, right? Like the system can't go down, right? I think this is one similarity we have between like software and finance.
Unless you're the Tokyo Stock Exchange and the system goes down every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a further separation between what kind of work they're doing, right, in finance or in software. Like in software, the front end engineers, the UI people can all work from home, and they can live this new elegant lifestyle of in the morning they study a foreign language, they do work for 2 hours, and they work on their own personal projects. But still, the people that are holding the infrastructure.
Don't forget 2 hours for mindfulness and yoga.
Oh yeah, that too, right? And 2 hours for your new Instagram account where you post about all the new cupcakes you're making. Sorry if that's really specific. I'm not targeting anyone, but like
Aaron, you didn't tell me about the cupcakes. I love cupcakes.
But I mean, since last year, I've noticed a lot of friends and family are doing new creative projects with the new time they have at home, which is awesome. Because, on average, most people get like an extra 2 or 3 hours out of the day because they don't have to commute anymore. But yeah, I'd say it still depends, right? If it's more like front end focused, even on the finance side, you'll get this luxury, but there are people that actually really have to like hold, like it's in their hands. Like they're the hero at the company and they can fix stuff when it breaks. And if they're not there, then everything's going to go to shit, right?
No, it's a really good point. And I wonder how that's going to change in the coming decades as work is changing, and what constitutes these sort of, company heroes will also change. One thing that's also going to change, and this feels a bit weird for me personally, is what is considered to be sort of the premier office district in Tokyo. Because, Roppongi Hills was the place to have an office. And so if you were Goldman Sachs or Google or another big rich company whose name starts with G, you had to have an office in Roppongi Hills. And that's where Google and Goldman Sachs were.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, both with Google and soon to be Goldman Sachs, this is becoming past tense. Goldman Sachs had 754 employees in Japan as of last December and has been a key tenant of the Mori Tower in Roppongi Hills since the complex opened 18 years ago, even after reducing space as its headcount fell. Now, Toranomon Hills is, of course, not that far away, just about 3 kilometers away from Ochemachi, the main financial district for corporate Japan. But I'm kind of sad, Roppongi Hills was always the place where all the cool companies were, and it was sort of really the center of the sort of global companies in Japan.
Oh yeah. Just like going up in that building, you just get a sense of like, oh yeah, going up to the 50th floor in the Mori Tower, But I saw recently too, there's a gigantic building somewhere in Tokyo with Google written on it.
Yeah, that's the new Shibuya Stream.
Ah, okay.
And so they're basically, that's their building.
Yeah.
They're the anchor tenant. So, and then you've also got, Toranomon Hills, there's the tower they built a few years ago, and now there's going to be this 4-tower complex, and Goldman Sachs is also going to have their office there. So that makes me think, okay, so is Toranomon Hills the new Roppongi Hills?
I think it's headed that way. I mean, I visited the Toronto Hills building that was built a few years ago. So nice, man. Such good restaurants.
But at the same time, though, it's not Roppongi Hills. It doesn't have that same like, ooh, this is fancy kind of, it's a lot more demure, modern. And I mean, maybe that's what fancy is in 2021, but I don't like it. It's not gaudy enough. Needs more gold and bigness and, speed and power.
Yeah. It has that, the construction vibe and interior vibe you're describing is accurate. It's a little stale, and there weren't a lot of people there too, because not a lot of people are going there yet. This was pre-pandemic that I went there.
They've got a big convention center there, and so I've been there for a few conferences, and every time I always think the same thing. There aren't enough restaurants. It's just kind of bleh. And I mean, I don't mean to sound like a snob, but the thing that Toronto Hills has that Roppongi Hills doesn't have is a hotel in the top floors. And so Tokyo Midtown did that with the Ritz-Carlton, and Roppongi Hills has a hotel on the complex, but it's, the Grand Hyatt, and it's in a separate building, and it's not, 50 stories above the ground, like a penthouse suite. Not the sort of thing you'd see on, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous or anything like that. But Toronto Hills has that with the Andaz Tokyo. And so when that opened, I went over there and I was expecting, some Ritz-Carlton-y, fantabulous, fancy experience. And I was sort of underwhelmed. I mean, it's a nice hotel, don't get me wrong, but everything there just felt like a fancified Courtyard Marriott in the sky.
How many stories up does that one go?
It's around the same. It's around 50 stories. Most all of the buildings, the skyscrapers in Tokyo are at around 50 stories.
They can't go higher.
I think, it might have something to do with making sure that it has earthquake resistance. There might be some building planning stuff. I don't know, but they're all 50 stories. So because reasons.
There's a new one in South Korea that's in 90 stories. And I was watching like this Korean YouTuber show the view. I got really bad vertigo, man, just watching the video.
I hate to say it, but after 9/11, does anybody really want a 100-story tall building?
Dude, just thinking about 90 stories, like, oh my God, forget about it, man. Just thinking about it right now is giving me a vertigo, dude. I don't know. I couldn't do it, especially after living in Japan for 10 years where we have constant earthquakes. Like, even if I was in a country with no earthquakes, I would.
Ooh, there's my vertigo. Okay.
Right.
Mommy, can you please bring in mommy?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a little too high.
But what's going to happen to Tokyo office space? Is it going to become dirt cheap? I mean, it's, the same thing we talk about Tokyo real estate and Japanese real estate in general as well, because we have a declining population. What's going to happen?
We've already got the tower mansion problem in Tokyo, right? Like all these tower mansions that are gorgeous inside that are vacant, correct?
They're not vacant. I mean, they are still selling. They're just not selling as briskly, perhaps, as they were. But it's seasonal. And honestly, I don't think Tokyo real estate is going to erode anytime soon because, I mean, the cheaper Tokyo real estate gets, the more foreign buyers are going to come in.
Oh, yeah.
And Tokyo real estate is already a pretty damn good deal.
Yeah.
So I think, especially central Tokyo, I don't think we're going to see prices go down. I wonder what's going to happen with real estate, though. I mean, if Tokyo real estate gets cheaper, I would imagine firms that have offices that are less centrally located might choose to come closer into the city. But even with, big companies reducing their floor space, I really don't see the demand for office space, evaporating completely. What I do see, though, is a shift from, these massive, full floor office spaces to more smaller office spaces.
Yep.
And honestly, it's a very welcome happening because when I was looking for office space a couple of years ago, if you want to have, a small to mid-sized company, if you want to have a nice office in central Tokyo, you're pretty much screwed.
Oh yeah. It's been overpriced for a while. I mean, it's funny. The same thing's probably going to happen in the States. There's a huge mass exodus of people leaving the two of the most expensive property areas in the U.S., New York City and San Francisco and Los Angeles. So, I mean, maybe developers will just start putting up a wall and being like, okay, it was one room, but now it's two rooms.
Bada bing, bada boom.
And it's half the price,
No, I definitely think, though, that post-pandemic, we're going to see a very different world in terms of real estate, both residential and corporate. And the trends are going to, they're going to move mountains. At the same time, though, I don't think we really know at this point in time where exactly it's going to go. I think there are a couple of different directions that we're going to be seeing. And, we also haven't seen the end of this pandemic yet. So what will happen?
There's already the international interest in Japan real estate with the whole Japanese house craze. So I definitely see, man, no matter what happens, I think the demand is just going to keep increasing for real estate in general all over Japan.
For sure. Well, we'll keep watching it.
Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.